Welcome to Me Financial, the podcast designed to inspire your financial life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about financial intimacy with couples, and we have Ed Coambs here to talk about it, and he has multiple letters after his last name. I asked him what I should say with all of this, and he said, just say he has multiple graduate degrees and certifications. And you guys, it is a real alphabet soup. I don't think I've ever seen any with so many letters. So he is very, very qualified to talk about this. He is a firefighter turned financial planner turned marriage and family financial therapist, and he is an expert in helping couples develop financial intimacy, one of only 100 financial therapists in the U.S. And I am honored to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, I have been watching your content, and as I was saying, I think it is just so authentic and real, and it's just what you have to get to, I think, with financial intimacy. And I am honored that you're on the podcast. So thank you again for sharing your time and your knowledge with us.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started about like what financial intimacy is and why people have such a hard time with it.
Oh my gosh. Well, what's so funny is I'm teaching a class right now with a bunch of financial advisors and about the therapy stuff, and we're just doing a role play about having couples talk about their investments. And you could tell, like, even though this was just pretend, they were so in the role of being upset with each other about the investments that you could just feel the tension. And it was just like, oh my gosh, that's not financial intimacy, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so what is financial intimacy? It's this sense of open-heartedness and relaxed and ease in your body when you go to talk about money with your partner. And that may be about your spending. That might be about your investing. That could be about your taxes. That could be about your insurance. It could be about your estate planning.
Yeah. But you're not meeting it with like a huge, okay, we had to talk about this, like that kind of thing.
Right. The heaviness that, is there for so many of us is not there when you really have financial intimacy, because the requirement to experience financial intimacy is a sense of relational security and acceptance that you're really going to be safe no matter what happens in this conversation. And for most of us, we either consciously or unconsciously bring a lot of judgment, both to money. So even though we love our partners, all those layers of judgment and criticism and fear show up in the conversations. And so it creates performance anxiety.
Okay, that's a great way to put it. And I always say that you've got to be on the same team. And I guess you're kind of saying the same thing, that it's
100%.
Yeah, and that's the way I guess I've always looked at it, is that we're on the same team. And so we were always trying to figure out our mutual goals and mutual everything. And so I guess what you're saying is a lot more about the feelings in the body, and which I think is great, because I think that's where we need to go.
Yeah, well, because we all live in our bodies. Now, whether we're aware of what's going on in our bodies or not, that's a whole nother question. But what we're feeling in our body will drive our level of availability and openness to being in the conversation with our partner. So we may want to and intellectually understand we should be safe, we should be talking lovingly with our partner, but next thing you know, we're coming out with criticisms, or we're withdrawing, or we're being passive aggressive, and we're not moving forward and making important financial decisions for our household. So we got to start with that concept. Yes. And I love it. Being on the same team together sometimes is a little easier for people to connect with. I think intimacy has that next level of vulnerability and real connection in the relationship. And it's being known in your relationship is really at the heart of this.
And so do you find that people have to work for a long period of time in order to get to that point that they are feeling relaxed with their partner? I guess it depends on the couple, but
yes, it does depend on the couple. And by and large, it does take a little bit of time to get there, because for most people, what they haven't experienced or seen firsthand is loving, safe conversations around money. And so literally their brain and body doesn't know how to produce this experience. if you will, it's kind of like learning to kiss for the first time, and it's just awkward.
Mm-hmm. If you don't have that example, it's like watching your parents. And if you don't have that example of healthy conversations and they always fought, then that is how you know how to talk to people.
That's exactly right. And that's where we first learn about talking about money. So it's what we saw happening between our parents, or our mom and dad, or dad and stepmom, and whoever those primary caregivers were. We saw conversations about money. We heard them. We felt them amongst adults, but we also felt them directed at us as kids.
Mm-hmm.
So were we treated with love and care and respect and empathy, or were we criticized, judged? Were we controlled? What kind of experiences did you have when you were being raised around money?
And is it specifically around money? I mean, I could see it being around, can I buy this toy or what? But does it sometimes translate to other things in life?
Oh, absolutely.
Like food, or I don't even know what other example to pull.
Food, sex, friends, media. I mean, right? There's such a wide range of experiences that we go through that all fold into our sense of who we are in the world. And that's what we bring then into our relationship with money. So, when I look at the research, there's quite a few of us that experience childhood trauma. And childhood trauma has a profound impact on our sense of who we are in the world, our thought patterns, our emotional responses, and our behaviors. All of that then comes into the way we show up with money. So yeah, we're not just talking about money experiences alone, but what we are doing is shedding light that money experiences specifically have a profound impact on it, because it's the closest one-to-one relationship.
Okay. And it always fascinates me, like, why is that? I'm always just like, how did we get here? Like, I know it has been hundreds and thousands of years and we've had money, not necessarily the dollar, but, food and all of that. But it just seems like there's so many more important things. And then we're so focused on money, but we have to, because you're not going to have a house or food or, a phone or some things to get around. And,
yes.
And it's just this conundrum of, no, my family and my friends and my relationships are the most important. And then you bring in this money element. And so we're taught these conflicting messages, right?
Yeah.
And so I could imagine that that's also part of why we have such a hard time with financial intimacy, is because of that, because we're like, no, we don't really need to talk about it, maybe, or it's not really important.
Yes. Both of those things are major factors, right? Is money a good thing? Is it a bad thing? When we frame it in this black and white binary. Well, if it's a bad thing, well, most of us don't want to be associated with bad things. So then we create distance, right? Mm-hmm. Or we learn that it evokes jealousy or envy or greed or insecurity. Mm-hmm. And those are not pro-relational experiences. Do not go there.
Yeah, you don't want to make anybody feel small.
Right? Well, I mean, most of us don't. There's a few out there that seem to get their rocks off of that. But that's a whole different problem. Mm-hmm. But what we do learn is that what we share about ourselves has an impact on people's response. Right? So if we say, oh, I'm going to, I have young boys now, and they're like, oh, well, we're going on this trip. Well, they're watching their friends' response to that trip. And then, their buddy's going off on a trip or getting a new toy, and they're having a response. So they're learning as they go, oh, people have responses to what I'm doing. And, while going on a trip is not directly about money, it takes money to go on the trip. But
people will assume things when you
People are assuming and filling in all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the thing, is as humans, we're always making meaning and sense of things. There's no avoiding that.
And I think that's the hard part.
That's part of what brings the complexity.
Mm-hmm. And so do you give people tools to deal with that kind of stuff? Is that kind of what financial therapy is not only dealing with your stuff, but also learning how to deal with the reaction of others?
Absolutely. That's a large part of it, is learning how to work with your own reactions, work with other people's reactions. What do you do? And especially in the context of working with couples is, well, I normally shut down and withdraw when my partner does this. Okay. Well, is that helping you? Probably not. So then how do we get into a productive conversation about talking through spending, let's say? So recently I was working with a couple where the wife, and not to be overly gender stereotypical, but, she was the responsible for buying all the household goods for the kids. Right? Okay, well, that's fine. No argument with that. Great. But the level of anxiety and the missing, and her husband is trying to say, well, hey, we need to talk about this. Well, you can't tell me what to do. This is my job. Defensive, guardedness. Has he been critical of how much she spent? Oh yeah, that too. Right.
So there's a history.
There's a history. There's always a history, right? But part of his concern that she's not seeing is he's thinking about their retirement and not working in 20 years. But at the pace they're going, it's never going to happen. And this is not a family where there's not enough income coming through. So they're really stuck in trying to figure out, how do we balance this, meeting the needs of today with the kids? And it's more than just saying, well, get on a budget. I mean, being on a budget and understanding the clarity of how much money is flowing through is a part of it, but it's being coordinated. And there's also relational trust issues there. Will you be there for me in the future?
Right. And are we on the same page about our goals? Are we on the same page just about balancing what is for today and what's for tomorrow? And, I could see, because if you're not on the same page, I mean, it's just you're living separate lifestyles while in one bank account.
Yes. And that's why sometimes they go on and create separate bank accounts thinking that will solve the problem. And yet it usually drives a further wedge.
Yeah. That was one of my questions for you is what is your opinion about separate bank accounts? Does it work sometimes?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of hard and fast absolute rules.
Right.
But in general, I think that the separate bank account thing doesn't work out in the long run. It creates a lot of issues around financial transparency. And so my big question for couples is, why do you need separate bank accounts? Usually there's a fundamental trust issue. So if we can solve for the trust issue and build trust, does that change the need for it? At the same token, I'm a pragmatist and realize some partners are pretty irresponsible with money. And there's a need to create some sense of separation or safety. And so I don't want anybody listening and being like, okay, well, I guess I've got to just force it all together. No, please don't just force it all together. There's usually some changes that need to happen.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some steps, that need to happen beforehand. Yeah. And so if you're just getting married, so let's pretend people are engaged.
Yep.
And they're coming to you and saying, they have ideals, right? And one wants to jump in the same, I call it jumping in bed together, jump in the same bank account. And then the other one is very adamant about wanting separate bank accounts. So there's obviously then steps that they could get to then merge. Because that was a real surprise to me when I got married was, we're not only merging the house and kids, but we're merging our finances. And that was a whole nother spiritual, emotional blending for sure.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah. Right. And that we're together in this, and together in our goals. And that was just a huge realization for me. And just, I would imagine that some people get engaged and they're not even thinking that way.
Yeah. I don't know what the percentages are, but the number of couples that are surprised about that process of joining their financial life together is high.
Really?
Anecdotally, when I talk to people, they don't have proactive conversations about their expectations about how they're going to manage the money and blend it together. But inevitably, there's going to be some different ideas about how to do that. And where I like to go first with couples is backwards. What did you see in your family? Why was it structured that way? Does that still make sense now in the context of the relationship that you're in? But, a number of people have gone through family environments where it was contentious and money was taken or treated in very inappropriate ways. And so there's a natural kind of self-protectiveness that comes with them around sharing their financial life, and blending feels very dangerous or threatening. And so we want to respect that, just like if we're getting to know our partner and we're trying to be sexually intimate with them, but we don't know that they had an experience of sexual abuse in their past. Well, that's going to color their ability to be open and comfortable and intimate sexually. Mm-hmm. The same is true with our finances.
It's the same thing. It's that amount of intimacy.
Absolutely.
And isn't it interesting that money is that intimate? Like people, and I've heard that saying before, is that people are more willing to jump in bed together and be sexually intimate than they are to be financially intimate.
100%. Because, risking sounding a little crude, even bad sex is good, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you have an orgasm, okay, I had an orgasm, maybe it wasn't the most intimate, mind-blowing experience, but if we share
bad
money,
sex was good, okay. But then when you share money, that could be devastating.
Like you don't even get an orgasm at the end of sharing money. Mm-hmm. So it's not a perfect analogy, and I certainly don't want to overgeneralize this, right?
I think that's a great analogy.
But I think if we go the other side, is when we're having great sex, it's so connecting, it's so meaningful, it's so pleasurable. What would it be like to have a financial orgasm with your partner? What's the equivalent of that?
Wow, I don't know. That's quite a question.
It is quite a question. And I don't know that I have fully had that experience, or but it's provocative intentionally, because it's like, well, what would it be like for us to really come together in this, great trip of a lifetime where we both have saved and we both meaningfully feel connected to it, and we both get through the trip and are like, wow, that was an incredible trip. And I'm so glad we just spent $20,000 doing it. Or, whatever the number doesn't matter. It's that sense of joint meaning and purpose that we use our resources to create this experience. It's going back to the newlyweds. That's when you first really start learning about how you're going to manage money. How much money are you going to spend on this wedding? What's the value of spending money on this wedding?
Yeah. Are we going to argue about how much we're going to spend on the wedding?
And, by the way, let's add in parental expectations of what you're doing or not doing, and how much support is going on. So we really are learning about our partners. I'd say we're learning about our partner's financial life from the moment that we meet them.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Going out to eat, or
where they take us on the first date, the drink they have. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
It's true.
Do they talk openly about it? How do we split the bill? What does that mean or represent?
Gosh, this is so interesting, because I'm very lucky in that, my husband and I, we don't have arguments about money, and I don't know. It's just not. I feel so lucky, because then I interview these people on here like you, and there's like all these people have all these issues, and it's the number one reason that people get divorced, and so it's very interesting to me. But maybe it's because I talk about money all the time, and so I'm not worried about. Like I talk about my money with everybody.
Yeah.
And so I've never understood why people get so closeted about their money. 'Cause it just is what it is to me. But, I'm sure I feel differently about other things that other people are really open about. And,
do you think it's always been that way for you, or is that something that's developed over time and with maturity and experience?
It's kind of developed over time, but I think it's once I realized that we were pooling and, wow, this is, we're together in this. And then having that conversation with him, I mean, he was a little bit more, maybe hiding some things here and there or what, I wouldn't say hiding. I should say, just not jumping on board as fast as I did, just because he didn't see my vision. You know what I mean? And so it was more of the sharing the vision. But I often say that, like, if he was hiding something from me, I would feel like he was cheating on me.
Yes, we like to call that financial infidelity.
Okay, absolutely. Well, that's how I feel if that was something were to happen. I
Right.
mean, because I'm like, don't pay for that trip, or because to me that's cheating on me.
Right. Well, because if you see money as a shared resource and have this expectation of full transparency, but then you're doing something separate, then we've violated our shared rule or value of being financially transparent about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But we hide things out of the fear of being criticized, judged, rejected, or shamed. And that may be because of the partner we're currently with, or that may be because of past experiences that we've had, or the combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're a loving, safe, open person and it's cool to talk money with, that doesn't mean that he can transfer that fully onto you. It's
Right.
going to have to be earned.
Yeah, it's a process for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and you often talk about attachment and people's different attachments. Can we kind of go into that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a field of psychological science and research that's been around for 80 plus years. And really what it's looking at is how do we form relational bonds with our primary caregivers? So mothers, fathers, when they're caring for the babies, what's happening for the baby's development and sense of who they are in the world and what are relationships like. And what the research has led us to understand is that people end up falling into one of four kind of relationship categories.
Mm-hmm.
One is secure, one is anxious, one is avoidant, and the other is what's called disorganized or fearful. So what does that mean? So if you have a secure attachment, and about 50 to 60% of the population fall in this broad category.
Oh, that's good. I mean, I would imagine that secure is a good one.
Secure, well, we like to classify as good or bad, but it is probably the most preferred, right? It's the most relationally comfortable, inferred in its name, secure.
I guess I just put it as there's not as much trauma to heal.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
ding. Yes.
Because we all know that trauma takes a long time to heal.
Trauma does take a long time to heal, and it impacts our relational attachment pattern. So if you have trauma in your history, you're more likely to have either anxious or avoidant attachment patterns, right? Which are basically saying that relationships are not safe or predictable, and I've got to do one of two things. I need to either be overly invested in the relationship, the anxious side, and trying to make sure everything is working all the time, and I'm minimizing my own needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm preoccupied with what's happening in relationships. I'm always worried whether I'm safe or I'm accepted, and I'm working really hard to try to make things go well. I view other people typically more positively than myself, and it's exhausting.
I would imagine so.
On the other side is that avoidant, dismissing side, which is like, I don't really trust anybody to understand my needs. I'm going to do me. You can't possibly understand what I need, so I'm going to just reject you. And anytime you make bids for connection or being close, I'm going to kind of create some distance. And how often and how intense that is varies depending on severity, right? But they have a more positive view of themselves. So, I mentioned this other category, which is disorganized, fearful. They move back and forth between the anxious and the avoidant patterns. So it's a real kind of push-pull. Come close. Once you come close, go away, back off.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, why are you pulling away? Come close to me. You're coming close to me. Wait, back off. It's too hot or too cold. It's never just right. Whereas those with the skiers, like they really know how to manage closeness and separateness, and they tolerate and expect closeness and separateness. So when I think about my clients through the lens of attachment, it helps me better understand why are they struggling to connect.
And so if they have these attachments and they are together, right? Because the anxious is often with the avoidant, right?
Yep.
And if they have those, there's tools or is it mostly like you just need to understand each other and have empathy for where they're coming from?
Oh, no, there's lots of different exercises that can be done to try to build towards secure relating or secure attachment, right? So this is being a little bit in the weeds, but secure relating is just learning the patterns of like, what does it look like to relate securely? Maybe I still am more avoidant, But I've learned like, oh, I do need to be curious. Michelle, how are you doing today? Oh, I see you need to blow your nose. Or what's happening? Or, it's like, but it's like, I still really don't want to be that close to Michelle. It's just, I've just learned that I need to be engaged, right? Versus really like your whole relational map. What in technical words, what we call it is the internal working model. It's a relationship map in your brain about what relationships are like. Trying to get that to evolve, that's really challenging. Right? How you see and experience relationships, because it's held at a mostly unconscious and automatic level.
Yeah, it is.
Right? Because our relationship map is built in those first months and years of our life. It's pre-verbal. And we don't change those parts of our brain very easily.
Which is why the first couple of years of life are so important.
Exactly. And even the intrauterine environment, when the mother is carrying the child, very important, because there's all kinds of neurochemicals and hormones that are being released. And so the mother's sense of wanting or not wanting the child can even be transmitted while the baby is being carried. So this can feel really scary and overwhelming for people to hear, and understandably. And the hopeful side is there's a phrase that's used is called earned secure attachment, where when you have new relational experiences of being met, being seen with empathy, eye gaze, eye connection is a big part of that. It goes into that sense of I am loved, I am safe. And we wash, rinse, and repeat that often.
Okay. And that works even with adults, because I know it works with kids and that you're staring at them and, you hear that a lot with babies. But you're saying that even as an adult, that it's important to create eye contact.
Yes. Eye contact is a primary means of attachment and bonding from infancy through adulthood. Eye contact can also mean threat too. So that's why, like, what's the presence in the eyes, right? Like, as people can't see us, but we're in video, like you're looking into the camera, I can see your eyes looking at me. It's like, oh, this feels pretty comfortable. It feels like Michelle is really engaged with me. I feel comfortable. So that having that experience with your intimate partner over and over again is very important. So one of many exercises is I'll have couples turn and look at each other and actually make eye contact before they start talking. Because if they make eye contact with each other, it automatically shifts the tone of the conversation.
I would bet. Yeah, I bet it softens it a lot.
Big time. So imagine now, coming back around to financial intimacy, before you start talking about your budget or your spending, before you talk about saving for the kids' college, before you talk about how much money you're going to spend on the trip for the vacation, what if you just took 10 seconds to slow down and say, let's get connected with each other first. Let's have some eye contact.
Yeah, I would think that would just help leaps and bounds.
Yes, especially for the secure or anxiously attached person. For the avoidant, dismissing that's going to be more threatening.
Because they're not wanting to connect.
Right. They're used to not wanting to connect. And what we want to remember is these attachment patterns were not chosen so much as they were developed automatically.
How does anxious develop? Is it that they weren't paid attention to, but they reacted in becoming anxious? Because I see the avoidant in that, you were ignored, and so I can't count on anyone.
Yeah, so I think it's right. You can have the same type of parenting experience, and you can go either way on the attachment continuum.
Yeah, just depending on the child.
Depending on the child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Right. And so I think even because I know that we can't dissect this down into a lot of things that people can, over a podcast. But if one thing that people could take away for creating financial intimacy, it sounds like they could just, before they even start a conversation, look in each other's eyes.
Yeah, they could practice. And I would offer play with, right? And recognize that you listen to this podcast and you go, hey, honey, guess what? I just heard on this podcast about this thing, financial intimacy, and we're supposed to look in each other's eyes. That could go really well. That might go kind of sideways depending on where your relationship is.
Okay. Because it could
right?
be
So,
threatening or something.
right. And it could feel really off the wall. And depending on where you're at in your relationship health, let's be mindful about that as an exercise. So if you're in a reasonably loving, stable relationship, by all means, have at it. If you're in deep resentment and anger, probably not the place I would start.
Okay. All right.
I might just start with, hey, can we listen to this podcast episode about financial intimacy together?
So doing something together, but not necessarily talking.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or let's read the same book. Yeah,
let's read the same book. Can be another one. Sometimes it's really hard to get a partner to listen to a book or read a book. And that's why podcasts seem to be an easier slide than a book. So yeah, listening to podcasts is a way to start gathering what we would say is top-down information, understanding about how it can or should be, and then moving into more of the experiential practicing and doing. Right? Because knowing about attachment styles does not make you secure.
No.
It just means this is where I sit, this is where possibly my partner sits, and this is where we need to go. But you actually got to do...
Right. Does your book cover some steps to take with each attachment style?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are exercises in my book, The Healthy Love and Money Way, that people can grab a copy of. And there's reflective exercises at the end of every chapter, as well as some of those kind of practical exercises.
Okay. And that's the name of your podcast too, right? Healthy Love and Money?
Yeah, the Healthy Love and Money podcast.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just making sure. Everybody, I will link all of that. I'll have a link to his book and to his podcast in the show notes. So just so you know.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, I'll put a little shout out. I also have a course. So if you want more exercises, I created a course called The Couple's Guide to Financial Intimacy.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So you can access that through my website, and it has 10 modules with, very short lessons, five lessons in each module, plus or minus. And each lesson will take 5-10 minutes.
Oh, so really?
You can just baby step your way through that and continue to understand the range of financial intimacy.
So is the online course, is it mostly like filling out forms and stuff, or are there some videos or?
Yeah, there's a lot of pre-recorded lessons and videos.
Okay.
With exercises that you can do with your partner.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of resources. And of course they can call you and do some financial therapy.
Yes. Also through the website, they can get the financial therapy, embed it with my financial planning process. And so what I know, you're a financial planner as well, right? When we're taking people through the financial planning process, they have all kinds of relational reactions and psychological reactions. And so, if you need that deep level of support around what's happening with me and how do I work with that, that's where the financial therapy really comes into play.
Yeah. Well, and I've learned a lot from following you, and because you post videos about even your kids, things that you're dealing with, it's really a story of, again, just being so vulnerable, I think, online about just the things that you're going through and even your family is, and the way to talk. And I think that's what's so important. I've learned throughout the years is just how to talk to people and how to be empathetic and meet them where they are. And I just view it as like you're on the same plane rather than being above or below them. You are on the same plane and you're just meeting them exactly where they are to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all humans at the end of the day, right? We're all worthy from my perspective, and we all have a complex history and relationship with money. And we may have some areas where we're more effective than others, but we also have our own blind spots that we need to continually work on. And so, this work is a journey of necessity for me, right?
Yeah.
As I didn't want to see or experience some of the same things that I saw in my family or that I saw in my wife's family once I got to know them. And so it's been this kind of on continuous questioning: how do I do this better? How do I do this better? And even when we're trying to do it better, we still make mistakes and mess things up, and that's okay.
Yeah, because life changes and, you grow and your kids grow older and there's just different situations to deal with. So that makes sense.
Or you're like an awkward 5-year-old trying to learn to do T-ball, and it's like, I see the big kid swinging the bat. I'm surely doing it the right way. And it's like swing and a miss, swing and a miss, swing and a miss. And then finally you hit the ball and it's like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like.
Right. And then all the hard work pays off.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Ed, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Michelle. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, this has been very eye-opening. And as I said, everybody, I'm going to link Ed's book and podcast and website and everything in the show notes. So if you want to explore any of his options, then you will know how to contact him, or let us know if you have any questions. And again, thanks for being on, and thanks for listening, everybody.